Welcome to Defending Digital. I'm Chad Warner. I'm pleased to have with me Dr. Curtis Levinson, Chief Information Security Officer of MetTel Inc., a telecommunications company. He has over 30 years experience in cybersecurity and information privacy with several organizations. He's also the United States Cyber Defense Advisor to NATO. Dr. Levinson, today I'd like to learn more about securing home networks and personal devices. But before we get into that, what piqued your interest in cybersecurity in the first place?
Back when I started with technology in the mid-70s, there wasn't cybersecurity. I started out punching cards on an IBM mainframe. One of the most fortunate experiences I've had was to be the military aide to Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, the woman who invented COBOL as a programming language and invented the Harvard Mark III as the first modern computer. My time with her led to an interest in how to secure those things, and my time with the military led me into the field of cryptography and how to secure telecommunications and later data communications.
Yeah, interesting piece of history there with Grace Hopper. I always think of her journal and the first computer bug with the insect taped into the journal there.
I've seen it. It's in the Smithsonian.
Mm-hmm.
The Harvard Mark III had contacts that clicked back and forth to make zeros and ones, and they sparked sometimes. And she found a moth hammered between two contacts, took the dead moth, pasted it with tape in her notebook, and wrote "first bug found in a system."
Yeah, nice piece of history. Zooming forward to the present day, what would you say are the biggest challenges or threats that consumers face related to home network security and their personal devices?
The single biggest challenge is we really trust our ISPs, which is a mistake. For most people at home, there is a plug in the wall that's either Ethernet or coaxial cable. That's where internet comes from. That jack in the wall leads into a box which belongs to the ISP, to the provider. And that box also has Wi-Fi built into it. Most cases. Once, and the Wi-Fi is broadcast throughout the intended area. The problem being there is no security around that box at all. And various experts have postulated that 90% of those provider internet boxes, internet modems, are infected by someone. It is not very easy, excuse me, it is not very easy to put a firewall. You can buy personal firewalls. To put a firewall between the wall and the internet router. So barring that, in my networks, I have a personal firewall, and you can find them at any major outlet online, in many electronics stores. I have that between the box. So what I do, I turn off the Wi-Fi from the provider's box. And it has settings. You can turn that off.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that feed into the personal firewall. I have the personal firewall connected to a Wi-Fi router. It's large enough or powerful enough to light up the area that I'm interested in. Therefore, everything that connects to that Wi-Fi router is filtered through my firewall.
Mm-hmm. Are there any particular makes or models of firewalls that you recommend?
I try not to recommend individual brands. There are so many. Mm-hmm. Netgear, Cisco. Generally, if you can recognize the name from media or newspaper or television, it's probably a better idea.
And what would you say the advantages are to a separate hardware firewall versus the firewall that's built into a typical consumer router?
The firewalls that are built into the provider routers, those are really not very effective. And as I mentioned, most of those, upwards to 90%, have already been compromised because you're not in control of that firewall. Your provider is. And your provider, no matter who they are, no matter how popular the brand, no matter what the company has offered to bundle with it, so you get internet service, cable, telephone, those are not reliable firewalls. So I attach the firewall to the provider's device, turn Wi-Fi off there, mm-hmm. and then use a separate Wi-Fi router that's under my control.
Sure. And then for consumers who have that separate Wi-Fi router, which is their own device, it's not owned by the ISP, what other steps should they take to secure the router itself, secure their home Wi-Fi network?
Routers broadcast an SSID, mm-hmm. or not. You can choose to make your network very private and not broadcast an SSID. If you choose to broadcast one to make it easier to pick your network over your neighbor's network, don't name your SSID the Smith's Internet. Mm-hmm. And if I do a Wi-Fi survey, and I'm speaking to you from my home office, if I do a Wi-Fi survey, I can tell what my neighbor's provider is. They named it for their dog, who I know.
Yeah.
Give it a different name. Most people have smartphones which are able to broadcast a Wi-Fi hotspot. Mm-hmm. My Wi-Fi hotspot is named Deadly Virus, which is, please you don't want to try this. Mm-hmm. So make your SSID as anonymous as possible, or don't broadcast one at all.
Mm-hmm. Any other steps they should take in terms of passwords on the Wi-Fi or guest networks or anything like that?
Yes. You get several choices of passwords, and the passwords go to encryption algorithms. Probably the strongest today is WPA2. And you want to make your password at least 12 to 15 characters using uppercase, lowercase letters, numerals, and special characters such as @ signs. Don't mix pets' names, your name, children's names up into a passphrase. Those make it very easy to guess for anyone who has done the slightest bit of reconnaissance on you. And reconnaissance on the internet is very easy. Mm-hmm. If you go to My Life or Spokio or any of those websites for a fee, they'll tell you everything. They'll tell you if you've been divorced, if you have lawsuits pending, if you have minor traffic violations, if you have major traffic violations. So it's very easy to do reconnaissance on a target. Excuse me. Very seldom do hackers randomly target an individual. Usually there's a reason. And once the individual is selected, then the next phase is reconnaissance. And then you start trying to crack passwords.
So for a family who has a variety of devices that are connected to their home network, let's say they have one or more Windows PCs, are there particular steps they should take to secure those Windows PCs?
Absolutely. Windows PCs should have full virus protection turned on. The security software in Windows, I don't remember all the different versions, but one of them that comes to mind is Windows Defender. Mm-hmm. I use virus programs like ESET, ESET, or Malwarebytes, mm-hmm. and they're different. ESET is a virus program. Malwarebytes is not looking for viruses; it's looking for Trojans, other means of attack. So I run both. And the brand names, again, are not an endorsement by me, but they're fairly easily recognizable.
Mm-hmm. How about the family that has one or more Apple computers running a Mac? What steps should they take? Anything they should do for those?
There is a terrible myth, and I get a fair bit of hate mail over this from Mac fans. This says Macs are virus proof. They are not. And follow all of the precautions that come with your Mac for security. Mm-hmm. And encrypt the disk wherever possible. there is a fairly famous hack that occurred twice. It occurred in someone's house, and it occurred in a casino. That both places had elaborate fish tanks with saltwater tropical reef fish. Those fish are very fragile, and their environment has to be minutely temperature controlled, salinity. That's about all I know about fish. But those tanks were on a Wi-Fi network. So the one guy, the one person who had their fish tank at home, instead of a screensaver of fish swimming back and forth, he had his fish swimming back and forth. And he was able to monitor their health and welfare and whatever else it is that fish need. The hackers entered through his fish tank and got into his Wi-Fi router. There is a phrase which is becoming more and more common, and that's Internet of Things, which is abbreviated as IoT. Those things are any device that has its own IP address. One of the most vulnerable is the video doorbell. It's not secure at all. In fact, a very large company bought a video doorbell firm and found that their employees were watching out through the video doorbells. Oops. Video doorbells are very risky because they exist as an IP address on the internet. That's how your smartphone gets a call when someone approaches your front door. There was recently a massive robbery in a wealthy neighborhood. The hackers got in through the garage door, which is just simply a set of numbers, and you can run through all the combinations and permutations of those numbers very quickly. So it was a combined electronic and physical attack. They made the garage door open. While many people put expensive, complicated locks on their front doors, the door between the garage and the house is most likely unlocked and open. So the elaborate lock on the front door doesn't really do anything as long as you're able to come up with the multi-digit code, and it's usually no more than 4 or 5 digits, which make the garage door open, and then the house is yours.
Sure. So for families who have, maybe it's not a fish tank, but maybe it's some other Internet of Things device, could be a lamp, could be a toy, any of those other things that are being internet connected, TV. What kind of steps should people take to make sure that those Internet of Things devices are locked down properly?
The popular phrase in the consumer world is smart home. That you have your thermostat, your doorbell, your coffee pot even, your fish tank, your garage door, all running on the same security system which shows up as IP addresses on the internet. Situations with smart homes need to be very carefully firewalled off. And for those folks, excuse me, it's pollen season here. For those folks that want to automate absolutely everything, I recommend they have a hardware firewall installed by a professional to cover all those different devices.
Mm-hmm. Is there an advantage to putting those devices on a guest network if a wireless router supports that, or a secondary network to kind of keep it separate from the main devices of the family?
Yes. Network segmentation is another way that once you're past the ISP and you start segmenting your network by different firewalls and different Wi-Fi routers, that becomes more secure yet. But as you've gathered, security and price are directly related. Mm-hmm. The more secure, the more expensive it's going to be. Anyone who goes and buys a video doorbell hooks it up to their smartphone, that's an internet, that's not just an internet connection, it's a persistent internet connection, has created a much larger vulnerability than not having the video doorbell at all.
Mm-hmm. So how about mobile devices? More and more families have an increasing number of mobile devices as kids get devices at younger and younger ages. People sometimes have multiple devices for work, for home. Let's talk about Android devices and then Apple devices. So how about Android phones, tablets? What steps should those owners of those Android devices take?
Well, the advice is really for both Android tablets and Apple devices, that if the device offers full disk encryption, use it. Mm-hmm. You pay a very small price in speed. But if you can totally encrypt your device, mm-hmm. that's one of the easiest ways that's how address books get pirated. Mm-hmm. And then you start getting email addresses from your friend saying, I was vacationing in Kenya and someone stole my wallet. I trust you. Could you please wire me money? Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And those are very, very common. And the other is when you have your smartphone, and I have one right here. When I'm not in my house or my office, it's taking internet service from the cellular provider. Mm-hmm. To save cellular time, when I walk in to my house or my office, it takes internet service from your Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And streaming movies is very popular. I have a television which is capable of Netflix and YouTube and all kinds of things. I have a separate firewall just for the television. Mm. And unfortunately, Security, again, becomes a function of expense and skill. And I recommend to anyone that gets a hardware-based firewall, have a professional install it. Don't try and install it yourself. A poorly installed firewall is worse than no firewall at all.
Other than having a smart TV behind a firewall, any other recommendations for locking down a smart TV, either related to security or privacy?
Privacy is a very difficult issue, but let me address security first. Security is a function of how many safeguards, like firewalls, encryption, complex passphrases that you want to take. Privacy is a very difficult issue, because if I were to ask a room of 500 people who here values their privacy, all the hands are going to go up. Mm-hmm. And then I ask, how many of you freely give your privacy away? Then the room gets nervous. Because when you get an app for your smartphone, how many people actually read the fine print? Mm-hmm. Nobody. Sure, check. I understand the terms and conditions. Give me the thing. Well, a lot of apps are free for mobile devices. Why would they be free? What does the author get out of it? Well, what they get is all your data. They're stealing everything they can. There are programs on mobile devices that will show you which apps are talking to the internet and which apps have access to your address book, your photos, your music, your whatever. There are software firewalls for mobile devices. For example, my phone came with NFL football something or another. I don't use it, but I found that NFL something or other has access to full access to my address book, to my phone numbers, to my photos. Well, through the software-based firewall, I just say no. Sorry, you can't do that. Just the simple act of installing, if you go to anyone's app store, whether it's Android or Google or whoever, and search on flashlight, there are loads of choices for flashlight. All the flashlight does is turn the camera strobe on. Except you may want to look at what permissions that flashlight requires. It does not need to talk to the internet because it's a flashlight. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need regular updates, but you will find that most flashlight programs have access to your phone book, your address book, your photos. All of that stuff goes to the developer of the app, who turns around and sells data downstream.
Mm-hmm. How about video game consoles, whether those are boxes at home connected to the TV or mobile video game systems? Any steps that people should take to secure those?
Same precautions.
Mhm.
Same absolute precautions.
Okay.
Facebook, which is one of my favorite frequent targets, uh, along with a lot of other people in my profession. Nobody reads the terms and conditions for Facebook, or 2% that give me that thing. Just because I'm not your Facebook friend does not mean I can't look at all your photos and read all your posts. It's really quite easy. And those photos are often stolen. There was a recent criminal case where someone went hopping through people's Facebook accounts and they found pictures of young children in swimwear at the pool, at the beach. You know, here's little Johnny, isn't that nice? That's great unless you aggregate them. And when you aggregate, put all those images together and create a pay site, you've got a problem.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into the question of what parents should do to protect their kids online, or even help their kids protect themselves online. What advice would you give to parents in that respect?
I used to tell parents, I used to tell anyone, never carry family photos in your wallet. Because if you lose your wallet, you're going to lose your driver's license, most likely. From your driver's license, they know your name, they know your date of birth, they know your address, and if there are family photos, it's a double bonus. Now they know what your family looks like. I don't recommend it. And I do recommend that for social media, which is social media, we could talk about social media for hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I absolutely recommend that every social media user, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever the rest of them, Snapchat, whatever the rest of them are, read the fine print on the contract, find out what the security settings are, and turn them up. Turn them on. Most people don't turn them on, but turn them on and turn them higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So look at what options are available. Take advantage of what is already built into the apps.
Very often, and I am not very good at celebrities. I'm just not good at it. I don't know who's who. But when you find a well-known person who goes, oh my nude pictures are on the internet, they have no one to blame but themselves. One, for taking the pictures on a mobile device that's connected to the internet, and two, for not having any type of appropriate security settings. So I have very little sympathy there.
One category of device that has really boomed over the last few years is smart speakers. So you have devices from Amazon and Google and Apple, things like the Alexa devices that are sitting in homes and they're waiting for people to speak commands to them. Do you have any advice for how to secure those devices or precautions to take with those?
They can't be secure. I would not take one if they gave it to me for free and paid me $1,000 a month. There was a very recent article of someone who made the request of Amazon under a number of privacy acts saying, what is it you know about me? And Amazon knew everything you asked Alexa to do. They knew what Alexa had access to. It looks very cool on TV. Alexa, start my car. Very, very dangerous, very easy way to lose your car. Those devices, those devices are really buyer beware. Understand, it's recording. Google Home was recently slammed that it was recording everything around it, even when you weren't talking to it. And if you read the fine print that comes with these devices, once your information, data, anything enters the device, it becomes the property of the device provider. They parse that stuff and sell it downstream. One of a very enlightening web search is just type into a search window, what does Google know about me? And the results can be frightening.
Yeah, it's been interesting in the last couple of years since the GDPR legislation has taken effect, and a lot of companies have taken steps to make that data available to consumers upon request. And people who have taken them up on that and request their information and then show how much is available. And yeah, it's been very eye-opening for a lot of people to see, and that's just the data that is then made available to those who request it.
Well, GDPR applies GDPR is General Data Protection Rule. Mm-hmm. It applies only to the European Kingdom. I'm sorry, pardon me, the European Community, mm-hmm. Not Kingdom. The European Community. California has just enacted their own privacy law, CCPA, mm-hmm. California Consumer Privacy Act. New York State is developing their own Privacy Act. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, which is part of the US Department of Commerce, is developing privacy guidelines. It's worth repeating, everybody wants privacy, but everybody also wants convenience. I had a sales person talk to me about what a frictionless sales environment is. And the ultimate frictionless sales environment is that whatever device knows you like a particular brand of running shoe in a size 10.5. And you've got your mobile device and you're driving. Well, the mobile device has a GPS in it. So you will get an ad over your mobile device saying that thus and such store is having a sale on your brand of running shoes, size 10.5, and it's only 3 kilometers away. Well, every time you order from a website, from a catalog, there is a tiny little box, and they do their best to hide it, that says, check this if you want to receive offers from us and our partners. It's pre-checked. You have to go and uncheck it if you don't want that. And the ultimate frictionless sales environment is your credit card is on file, your preferences are on file, and stuff just starts showing up in the mail that the vendor thinks you want, and it's your responsibility to return it and make sure you're credited.
Mm-hmm. How do you recommend that people stay informed about cybersecurity issues and digital privacy issues? Are there any particular sources that you recommend that people follow?
There are some publications that are very good, but they tend to be rather technical. SC Sierra Charlie SC Magazine is a noted source, but paying attention to just the news, the media around you is a good idea. Mm-hmm. A lot of people do not. Mm-hmm. So the only way to keep track of new developments in the security field are, if you really want to, you have to make the conscious effort that I'm going to do this. If you go into any search engine and type in how to protect video doorbell, all kinds of things, thousands and thousands of hits will come up. Not all of them are correct. My best advice has always been, be very aware of what technology you're using, how it's connected, how it's secured, and please do read the fine print before you agree to anything. So when you agree, you've signed a contract.
Yeah, so a lot of it comes down to due diligence, just taking the time to be aware, do the research, know what you're getting into.
Awareness is key. Excuse me. Awareness is key. Read all of the fine print. Find out what all of the options are for security settings on whatever device.
Do you have any other warnings or advice or encouragement that you'd like to share before we conclude?
Really one very low tech idea. Okay. And that is, everyone should own a paper shredder. Mm-hmm. They are very inexpensive, and you want a cross-cut shredder. Mm-hmm. And they're available all kinds of places. I saw one for sale in a drugstore. When you get bills in the mail, if you don't file them and don't need them, shred them. Mm-hmm. Dumpster diving is an Olympic sport for an awful lot of people. Sure. You throw it away, you've lost your rights to it. Mm-hmm. That's really it. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, for people who want to learn more about you, where can they find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn. I am the only Curtis Levinson on LinkedIn. Or you can search my name on Google.
All right. I'll include I'll include links to your LinkedIn profile as well in the blog post that goes along with this interview. So I've been joined today by Dr. Curtis Levinson, Chief Information Security Officer of MetTel Inc. Dr. Levinson, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And I'm Chad Warner of Defending Digital, teaching you to defend your digital life.